Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, I think we are ready to go. My apologies. Should not be this hard. It happens.
Daughter here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say that should be better.
From this side. Okay, so thank you very much to the two of you for joining us. All right, so we have McGee Kane, and we have Pat Harris, both of the city of Minneapolis. Harrison, sorry. Okay, it's been a number of years. And Pat Harrison with us from the city of Minneapolis, and they are going to share their research on fathers. Thank you so much. Hello to everybody online. Hi, good morning. This is probably the most comprehensive presentation we've ever given. So if anyone has questions, please interrupt and raise your hand. And for the folks that are online, if you put something into the chat, it should pop up for me so I can see where we're at that way. Let's make this go. Okay. We're going to cover a lot today, but we're going to try to punctuate with some spots to have some reflection or some conversation. And so look forward to that. So the first thing that we wanted to start with talking about was the scope of birth to unmarried moms in Minnesota. We are from the Minneapolis Health Department, which is located within Hennepin County in that green block in the middle. But as you can see, unmarried parenthood is quite common in Minnesota. It's significantly higher among women who are between the ages of 18 and 30, about 71%. And it's in the 80 to 90% range among our populations of color, specifically American Indian populations, African American, Hispanic. Other things to know about unmarried parenthood in Minnesota and nationally is that about half of couples who are unmarried at the time that they have a baby are living together when the baby's born. And that studies have shown over and over that virtually all dads and the majority of moms do want the father involved at the time of their baby's birth. So our approach this entire project was thinking about policies, procedures, programs that start from the assumption that we're trying to align with what unmarried couples tend to prefer. There are situations and cases in which a co-parenting relationship is not the ideal, and that's not what we focused on. We started with, you both are coming from a place of wanting dad to be involved. What is not happening to make that possible? So I know that we spent a lot of time thinking about what could be done. I'm wondering, in the variety of work that you do, what would it look like if we got this right, specifically in pregnancy and early infancy? There's a lot of information about what happens down the life course with dads, but what about that first touch, especially in home visiting? What are you doing? What would it look like if we got it right? Are you willing to help me understand where you're at in your programs? Or online and just enter it into the chat.
Yes, the Minnesota Indian Women's Resource Center, and we're implementing the we often would like father engagement, but not only father engagement, any big grandmas, aunties, uncles, and as much engagement with the family as possible. Part of many indigenous cultures is having that component of family involvement along with them. So we encourage that, but not only that, some of our clients will be the fathers, so we're not only looking at mothers. Influence the first round, we're looking at mothers specifically, but you know, if there are fathers that want to be part of the program, we'll do that as well. So I think just knowing that fathers can be involved is really helpful.
That's a big step we found and a huge part of the wish list that dads have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else doing any work in this area?
We would just have a real small number, handfuls probably of fathers that are actually at the meetings or during this time with the nurse and the mother. So it'd be a pretty small number.
So I have some housing services, and most of the moms I work with don't have a father like in the picture, but I recently just started working with a family, and for the first visit, the dad was playing, when I got there, he was playing video games, and I had him like come join the visit, and I talked to him about like how lucky his kid is to have two involved parents in his life. And I just started talking to him about the role that he has to benefit his daughter's development and growth for her entire life. And I went over yesterday for a second visit. He immediately turned off the TV and pulled us a chair and enjoys and really supporting him and reminding him that he gets a cheerleader through this too, and he's a really beneficial part of this baby's life. And I think that just that support that I was able to provide him really made him comfortable and be like, I'm a parent too, and I deserve to be part of these conversations.
So something I'm sort of picking up is it's not enough to just passively say, well, sure, you can come. But it's also enough to say, I'm bringing you in. I'm bringing you in. And I'm bringing, you know, the rest of the group in as we're understanding that everybody's in versus you're only in if you displace someone else. Because
I was just going to second that, I guess, is when we do the parent-child home program and when we do the intake, and they indicate that father dad is there and exists, then we'll ask maybe more and encourage that involvement. I think explicitly stating that we want that involvement, and then if dad is around when we're doing visits, we do a lot of visits with dads, you know, and they're maybe passively involved or in another room, we usually, not just sort of aggressive, you know, we make sure that they know, and we can continue on that path. Yeah, and then if they're in two separate households, we try to encourage that we can do one visit a week, this week with dad if possible, with that kind of thing. So.
Okay, great. This project was a pretty large project. We started off looking at what it is to have a specific father program within a home program. And so, yes, if there's any chance that you could mute your phone or your computer if you're online, it's getting a little scratchy feedback. Thank you. We started off with talking with dads and moms. What do you want? What do you need? What would it take? And this was done through a series of focus groups, and they were actually the ones who preferred the name father advocate versus case manager or home visitor. And they gave us a list of things that they wanted help with, which we'll return to, but it ranged from things like getting my GED, getting some job improvement, health insurance, dental insurance, sort of a long list of things. I think might be. And part of that was to also bake in the fact that this person existed for dad and was not going to share notes with the home visitor for mom, which was interesting, but that was what the fathers needed, was somebody that they could have some awkward conversations with that wouldn't necessarily get back to mom, but still honor the fact that they wanted to build a relationship with her. And then locating it in our home visiting agency. Did I miss anything, Pat? Is there anything else I should be unpacking there about where it came from?
Nope, that's pretty much it.
Pretty much the high points, okay.
Other than to maybe mention that mom felt just as strongly as dad's did, that dad needed his own person to talk to about his own anxieties and concerns. So she very much was in support of him having some private conversations on his own time. Because even moms recognize, even when we say the family is the client, they think it's mom. So,
but it was interesting, just as something I observed when we were having conversations with moms and dads, is dads were a lot of very stoic about things that when they told these stories, they were terrible stories. And if that was my brother or my husband or my friend, I'd be like, oh my God, this is horrible. And they would just tell them and say, okay, we're working through that. And mom would really advocate hard for him, like, that is not okay. This is completely inappropriate. And yes, we're not romantically together, but how can he be going through this? So there's a lot of mom support here. It's not going on. They wanted for dad so that he could be as involved as they could. And again, we were really focusing during expectant times, new parents. Our study only months into early infancy. But as we did the study, we kept hearing things back from the folks who were involved, from the home visitors, from the study personnel that suggested there was another conversation we needed to be having about some policy questions. So we had some underspent money, and so we asked for permission to unpack that a bit more. 30 or 40 service providers in all kinds of different areas, legal and home visitors and father advocates, and really there's a huge range, as well as about 80 parents, moms and dads who are unmarried at the time of their child's birth. And we said, what can we do to support father involvement during that period? And then step back and try to.
Nancy Jokes, will you please mute your phone and your computer?
You know what? It is muted.
It's not, because we can hear your headset moving.
You can hear me what?
Sorry. We can hear your headset moving every time you move in the office.
Oh, weird.
I logged
Is
on
my phone?
PC.
Yeah, my phone is, I'm sorry, my phone is muted, so I don't know.
Your computer is not, because we're looking
Okay.
out the window with you.
Weird. Okay, well, I will try to do that. I am so sorry.
No, that's okay. I just wanted you to know.
Yeah,
I know
yeah. No, thank you.
So one of the first things that we did is we have a prenatal risk overview that was developed for one of our clinical partners to look at what types of tools do people use, and could we put them all in one place to talk about what might require more specialized intervention and what's just something to keep on the radar of direct service providers. And then we also have a male version, a brief risk overview that specifically was developed in partnership with one of our men's health partners. So the thing that I want to show you here is that moms and dads at enrollment, so for us, the first or second conversation they had with a home visitor, have really similar risk profiles. They're really coming in with a very similar profile of difficulties. And that's where the split tends to occur, because mom tends to need a lot of support and services and dad can fall off, despite the fact that he's you know, a huge predictor on mom's success and the success of those early days. And that similarity is something that became the basis of how we went about handling this. And I'll say more about that in a moment. The other thing, aside from basic needs and social support, that I want to highlight is that we tend to think of depression as the greatest thing that we're most concerned about in those early days. And both mom and dad have, in our study, but also in other larger populations, tremendous rates of anxiety and PTSD. And so depression wasn't as high on the to-do list if you were just going with this very number of people who had a health concern. We did these screenings. We did not tell dad what he had to accept in response to these. They were used as a way to have a conversation with the father advocate and a way to say, I noticed, and to track the changes over time. Is there anything else that we should include about that, Pat? Okay. From there, these are the lists that the original focus group came up with of things that they believed they needed to get in order before having a baby. And so this became the list of services that we checked. Are you getting it here? Are you getting it somewhere else? In your life right now, is somebody providing this to you? And in our study, what we did is we divided the group into about a 60-40 split, where 40% of them did not get a father advocate. They had all their regular services as usual, and 60% did have an assigned father advocate that was within the home visiting program. And so for the group that had an assigned father advocate, we said, is your father advocate able to help you with these services? How's that going?
Good to mention, because TFP is here.
Yes.
The partners in this
And
project.
TFP and MBNA were our two partners, and then the home visitor was TFP.
And TFP for those.
Oh, I'm sorry, the family partnership.
Yeah.
So we asked dads about, did you get the service? And they were asking for help about the same number of times across all the domains and across all the possible areas between the two groups. They're pretty consistent. And dads who had the advocate usually got most or all of the help they needed. Their lowest numbers were in the 80% of the time. When I asked for help, I got the help I needed. Dads who did not have an advocate almost never got the help they want. They had no number higher than 40% of the time when they asked for help. In general, using their other networks. We decided not to compare the two groups purely, like control and intervention groups. The real question is are you getting what you need? And so we decided to say broadly, how's that going for you? The next thing that we asked is, okay, so when you got the help you wanted, then what? And so we looked back at that list of basic needs and social support and mental health and said, what happened? It was particularly striking in basic needs and social support. We had both statistical significance and clinical significance, but we didn't in mental health. So I'm going to focus really in on the basic needs and social support. To illustrate this, I looked at one couple's scores, and in the beginning, the father had a tremendous food insecurity risk and homelessness risk. He was mostly staying with other people on a temporary basis. He was skipping meals. But by the end, he wasn't reporting skipping meals, and he had stabilized his housing. And so the numerical score was not huge, but the personal impact of being able to eat and having a place to stay, as we all know, is huge. And the pair's mother was eating plenty, and she had a place to stay, but she had no one she could turn to, nobody she could trust, according to her scores. And then at the end, she was reporting she had some people. She had a beginning of a network. And we wanted to stay away from saying if it's not statistically significant, it's not a perfect study, that, you know, we have all the answers. But we did notice that people's lives were different when they had that kind of concentrated intentional support, no matter how that really, in the various ways it could look. It's also, I think, important for us to acknowledge that this is developmental. It's a small pilot. We don't have a silver bullet or a perfect formula, but we wanted to share some of what we learned and observed with the folks who are doing it and kind of get a read from you on, does that make sense with what you're seeing? The father advocate helped us understand afterwards what he felt helped and was useful when he was working with dads. The confidentiality was important. Moms and dads like that. Some of the moms said, for example, that he could talk about his feelings in a whole different way with this person who was not going to circle back around and tell her that he was super nervous or tell anyone else. It was just his space. The dads like to text. That was sort of, we should have thought of that, but it was sort of unexpected that they had long text conversations, just really involved, really intimate and deep and important stuff is definitely happening versus via text. It was definitely happening in not business hours, as you'd imagine, kind of all over the place. And our father advocate got really good with rolling with when are you wanting to talk about this and doing it in between things or on your way to your jobs or managing people's really busy lives. That was something that was important. Another was that being outside of the house was important. Sometimes it wasn't his house, it was his mother-in-law's house or the baby's grandmother's house. It was a friend's house, and having kind of a space away from all that was important. And the advocate told us that, you know, taking a walk, basketball, fishing, there's a lot of doing. And fast food restaurants, we won't advertise the particular ones, but definitely they wanted to go just hang out, have a meal, and just talk in a different kind of a setting. They tried some group work. They weren't massively well attended, but the people who attended them really liked the fact that they didn't bring a curriculum. They had kind of a pop-up responsive curriculum. So the dads talking about baby care, they were ready with baby care. They started talking about anxiety, they were ready with anxiety, but they let the dads drive it versus coming in and saying, we have a particular curriculum and we're going to cover this today. Of course, they had curriculum within those units, but they let the dad say, this is what I'm really worried about today. This is what's bugging me. And they liked the dad starter kit. It was a diaper bag. It had some diapers. It had some blankets. It was kind of a little baby shower celebration of, hey, this is happening and we're excited for you. And bus tokens, get all those appointments, all that stuff was really well received.
Yeah, I think the thing that father advocates struggled with the most was that fathers, and most of you know this, they're very reluctant to ask for help. They really have not been conditioned that that's an okay thing to do, to reach out and say you're struggling, particularly with a stranger or a near stranger. So it took a long time for them to figure out how to engage with, his name was Josh, how to engage with Josh. And it was once they started that relationship that it often blossomed pretty quickly. But we had a research assistant that was interviewing moms and dads twice before the baby was born, after in the home. The dads would kind of say they were really struggling with one thing or another, and she asked if he had the father advocate because she was blind to that condition too. And if they did, she encouraged them to get in touch with Josh. If they didn't, you know, she would mention talk to the home visitor or have you connect with the Father Project. She would mention other community resources. But I think reading what's going on with a lot of programs nationally, they kind of expect if they build it, men will come. and it doesn't work that way. And so I think that allowing him the time and the patience to just figure it out, and it was very individual with different men. Some men wanted somebody older that had a slew of kids because only he could understand what they were going through. Sometimes the racial match was important to people. So there, you know, women get used to working in the systems. We go to the doctor more often. They're the ones that have to apply for Medicaid and all this, and kind of fall into the pattern of sort of accepting what's put out there. It's very different for men, particularly young men. And so we did not get as many participants as we had hoped. But because we had really good notes from the father advocate, he kind of logged what he tried, what he did over time, learned a lot. And I just think if you are doing things, my message would be not to get discouraged when stuff doesn't work right away, but keep having that open communication with the moms and dads about what they may want or what's holding them back. Food is a big driver. It'll bring them in. A lot of the men were working, trying to fit something in between their time going home, and if you could have a light dinner for them to stop in and do that, that was really attractive to them. Then once they met people, they were much more comfortable coming back.
When we asked dads broadly, you know, about father engagement, and some of their feedback was just, I feel excluded, I feel like you don't even know my name, you don't even see I'm here. Prenatal appointments were particularly difficult because he's not actually the baby who's the patient, it's the mom, and like, how does he fit into all of this? And it was a struggle, and so I think it is kind of iterative, like keep asking, keep inviting, because they wanted it. They wanted it badly.
Most dads wanted to be known by their first name. It was amazing how many of them said they were just always referred to as dad in the clinic or the thing. I was the naming themselves was incredibly important.
So again, I'm curious because you are doing this work. How do these strategies fit in with things you've observed, or what would make the ideal possible?
Yeah. So John Till from the Family Partnership. So I knew Josh pretty well. We had, so to get into the HR tip a little bit, we debated whether the staff person should be an African-American male or could a male from a different racial group be effective, because we're primarily serving African-American dads. He's Asian and Cambodian, so fairly, Southeast Asian, fairly brown. He had extremely good engagement skills, like he was a car salesman. He knew how to talk to people and engage them. I think it was really tough to, have the mom's permission requirement in there. That was definitely an inhibiting factor. I can't say exactly why he left when the grant ended, because we wanted to keep him, but I think we can make more money in car sales.
Yeah.
It's definitely a consideration.
Yeah.
I think he felt called to the work, though, and we would have wanted him to stay on. I was just at Aspen Institute last week for a convening called the Father Factor. That was put together by Aspen and the Good Plus Foundation. That's Jessica Seinfeld's foundation. And kind of the themes that I heard there that I think are really relevant to this work, like what I think about what TFP could have done differently. Okay, so the main advice there from programs that were really successful was don't require mom's permission, like create ways for dads to get engagement and support without needing permission of the custodial parent. 2 is the kind of basic needs things that we're addressing so important, and what the Plus Foundation has found that giving dads car seat, stroller, diapers, crib that he can bring home to mom are things that are persuasive to mom that this guy is actually getting some support as the father. And that in itself helps improve the co-parenting relationship, which is often extremely strained. One of the hire men who look like the men we're serving. Like I said, you know, we weren't perfect there, but I think we had a good guy in that role to talk to men. And the thing where we fell down is, you know, constant theme. You need to have pictures of men up in the building where you serve people, and not just the domestic violence prevention poster.
Yeah, right.
So that was a recurrent theme in session after session that came up. And another thing which I'd be really interested in anybody who's an expert on child support in Minnesota that came up across the country is this theme of child support in the community. Paying up to 60% of your wages, which forces you into other lines of work that are under the table to make your own ends meet, and the state's role in when states get involved in collecting those child support fees, they're often taking a cut ostensibly to reimburse themselves for TANF payments to mom. And so I'd be really interested in knowing if Minnesota did that, because that's a real public policy opportunity for us to think about as we're thinking about father engagement and family.
And I swear we didn't prep him for this. But that's exactly. And people said, yeah, and we're stuck with this other, these policies.
Yeah.
Custodial mom used those words, child support.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, I'm in it to win it. I want to be here. I'm dreaming of my child going to Harvard, NFL. People have the same excitement anyone has when they're baby born. And then my path is very different than a married dad or a well-off dad.
It was interesting that a lot of dads said that they really did not have an objection to child support. They didn't see why the state had to be in the middle of it. And that made us think, why couldn't you have a policy where dads first got a shot at voluntarily contributing, and somehow that was documented, because again, they feel like that. They actually said they feel like the county, they're just the cash registers to the county. That's the only way that they're ever recognized as fathers, is to bring money to the table. The rest of their skills we don't support, and that's really pretty true. I'm not positive about the cut that the state or the county made. I do know that some states have suspended for people that are incarcerated, and they don't have to back pay those months or years that they were through the people coming out owing $10,000, $20,000. You know, it's ridiculous. But dads really want to be seen, like you said, to be the ones that are bringing home the crib or the winter snowsuit or something like that. All of that stuff has very tangible and symbolic meaning to them. We deprive that from them, give the money to the state, mom gets to buy the stuff, and he's not quite in that equation. And so I think there's a lot of changes that could be made. I get the ideas, child support, but we need to hear that the parents don't like the way it's working. Could they get out of the picture? And if they could do it voluntarily, let that be default.
Another suggestion from the moms especially was that daycare is expensive and I got to work. If he could provide daycare, that has monetary value to me. Can we respect the fact that daycare costs an arm and a leg in Minnesota? It is of significant monetary value if he does not daycare, but dad time during the day while she works, or at night while she works. And there's a dollar amount if she doesn't have that. So why couldn't that be part of the equation too?
Your comments on Josh, the most common thing we heard in the wrap-up interview is good dude. He's a good dude. They said he was always there for him. Now, this might not work for everybody, but I think Josh was almost on call 24/7. If he could answer, but it seemed appropriate to talk about. And the trust that built up over time was really pretty amazing. And he was there for some of the dads where they had a pregnancy loss. We should have anticipated that could occur in the sample. It did, in fact. And dads needed somebody privately to grieve with as well. And Josh was amazing in terms of being able to see those men through that process too.
Can I just so your question too, John, about going through the mom to access services. So I think in this study, you were required to do that. And what I found really interesting about the study is that in order to access services or to do this study, it was federally funded. We had to go through, or the department went through the maternal and child health pot of money. And it was really, it had to be tied to like mom's outcomes, right? So,
Well, when you think of the Maternal Child Health Bureau, who's
Yeah.
funding most of the home
Yeah.
visiting, that is their charge.
yeah,
To have better outcomes for moms and
Yeah.
babies. They're thinking about adding dads in as this kind of a little
Yeah.
appendix right now. But it is not their fundamental charge. So yeah, when
Yeah.
we designed the study, bringing that up, the only way we could do a study on that, the first one that was ever done, was if we could show improved outcomes on moms. So yes, we need her consent to ask him if he would participate, because we would have to get outcomes
Yeah.
from her. So we've written them extensively about the problem with that.
And something I just noticed when I'm trying to engage fathers, because I know most home visitors are women, and what I found is that's been really helpful is acknowledging that you guys are left out of the picture way too often. And I recognize that, and I want to bring you in. And so making sure that you acknowledge that you know that they're left out of the picture and you are making an effort and you see them for who they are and that they should be invited in. And you can tell, like, it helps them be seen to know that they're not seen, if that makes sense. And that really helps with engagement too, as women to engage a dad, is acknowledging the difficulties that they've had and wanting to bring them into the picture.
You know, when we were doing the focus groups with the dads to help design the study, we had a young man, and he was a great listener. He hardly said anything, but he drew the guys out. And a couple of them at the end of the interview asked if they could hug him, and they hugged him, and they told him that nobody had ever asked them those questions in their entire life. And how did they feel? How did they experience childbirth? What was it like when this and that happened? Nobody had ever asked them. And they were just really, really amazed. And another young man would care enough to do that. Just reaching out to that, for many of them, it's going to be the very first time that somebody's really validated their role.
And when we came back, it's really surprised.
We do a variety of work, therapy, all sorts of different things, and universally, date treatment, all that. If the mom makes the primary contact substantially before the dad's involved, so for example, if the dad's not at the first meeting and maybe a month goes along, it's almost impossible for whatever staff that person is to validate dad in the same way that they would have validated mom. If the dad is there early in the process, it's a much easier deal. And again, it's in therapy, it's in all of those things. And part of it's that natural belief of the care provider. So it's the home visitor, the therapist, whoever, to believe that what you're getting from your client is the truth and accurate. So they want to believe that if they're told dad's not good, they want to believe that. So if dad's not there to give fairly immediate counter programming, or at least stand on their own 2 feet, a month later, it's almost too late for that dad then to show up and to get involved, because that kind of die has been cast to some extent. So that's one of the challenges as well, is that there's a really, in our experience, a very limited time. In the same way, if it's the dad that has the kids and that relationship forms, and that's why, to me, there's validity to it, because it happens. We do have a couple of dads who are our primary client. And the moms are known to be in treatment or known to be incarcerated or known, whatever that is. It's still very hard for the home visitor and for the model, the therapist, whatever, to be able to say, I'm going to respect that incoming parent in the same way, or do anything to make it 50-50, for example, because they almost feel like it's an intrusion to that relationship. So I think that's also true, probably what Josh and other people feel in that work.
We had some folks who do direct service who mentioned, like, I used to be in this seat and I'd hear from moms and I believe dads were mostly bad. Then I'm over here and, oh my God, I will acknowledge that my point of view changed when my work changed. And she was very candid with us, and I appreciated that because that's a big thing to be able to say I screwed that one up. And so it's great to talk to people about things like that, and there is a window. So we did talk to the parents about, okay, so you guys are telling us some things, and try to work with this excellent listener we had to say, what are you running into that's bigger than policy, is what they kept talking about, which was interesting. So just as a quick background for anyone who's not familiar with these policies, again, most unmarried parents want to co-parent and share custody in some form, some combination of legal custody, some combination of physical custody, which are terms that you might not be familiar with unless you happen to have gone through a divorce or court or adoption or any of those things where we have to talk about these things. Physical custody is your parenting time, time spent with you. Legal custody is your ability to make decisions and be notified of major events like school and medical events. And most parents don't receive information about establishing paternity or any of this custody until after the child's born. Unfortunately, in Minnesota, the term we use is legal fatherhood, which is not legal custody, and that's completely confusing. Legal fatherhood means that your child can file for survivor's benefits, Social Security benefits, like that. It doesn't mean that you have the right or ability to make decisions or have information about medical or school or things like that. And that's totally different from parenting time, overnight, time spent together. And under our state law, the mother has sole custody at the time of the child's birth, and to obtain custody and parenting time and any of that legal decision protection, and unmarried fathers have to go to court. And you can imagine that when we're talking about dads who are concerned about child support, dads who are of color, dads who have possibly police interactions in their background, one dad said, I'm smart, I'm educated, and I can't figure this out. I am really good with the Google, I have a college degree, and I can't tell what you want me to do. It's just confusing. So we get just the entire spectrum of people finds it's a really arduous thing, and moms and dads said, you know, it's kind of unfair. We both agree. If we didn't agree, that'd be something else, but we live together, we're doing this together, but he can't take the kid to the doctor? Not right. So that's, again, the dads we're talking about. We're not talking about the ones where there's significant disagreement. We're talking about everybody's on the same page, and this is really difficult to pull off. So we spoke with the parents and some of our stakeholders, and they said one thing is the first time we ever hear about this, I just had a baby. You want me to watch a movie? You want me to do car seats and safe sleep and all this stuff? You want me to do breastfeeding? You want me to do all of this at once and make this really critical legal decision of the recognition of parentage process, which is one of two ways to have your name on the child's birth certificate. The other one's going to court. So this is easier than court, but it still has a lot of implication, and parents are saying, I can't do this right now. What I want is I want him to sign the birth certificate and let's keep going. And he wants to sign the birth certificate. And to get there, you have to sign up for child support, which is what the recognition of parentage does, and sign up for those survivor's benefits. It's really about finances for the dad. And the symbolic trade-off is he gets his name on the birth certificate, which was critical to dad. And in fact, they say, I know that I'm in a world of hurt if I sign this. But I want my name on that birth certificate. So when she goes for her first job, she knows her dad was there. When she goes to college, she knows I was there. And they have all of the hopes and dreams you'd imagine tied up, and I want that signed. There's some sadder things too, like people would say, you know, I don't have much of a family left. I want them to be able to my child to be able to look back. If mom dies, I want my baby to go straight to dad. That's not what works. But those are the hopes and dreams that are circling around this legal process. The nuances are exactly the difficulty. So for example, if dad signs the recognition of parentage form, goes on the birth certificate, and mom dies, he still has to go to court to argue for the fact that he should have custody of that child, and that's not what the parents wanted. They're trying to say, worst case scenario happens to me, at least your dad's in the picture. That's not the case though. And we do a lot of things to try to make that easier, but it's not what parents are trying to accomplish. And the other issue is finally, everybody's on the same page, but to get all the paperwork to match people's intentions is a heavy lift. It's an intimidating lift. And it's not even clear with all the possible focus and attention and waivers for the cost and working with attorneys or not attorneys or self-help. It's really hard And it seems unfair that if everybody agrees, there's not an expedited process or some way to make this work together a little bit more quickly. So we said, well, what could we do about this? And what are the suggestions from this group of folks that we talked to, of, again, about 30 to 40 institutional stakeholders and about 80 parents. And one is sign the recognition of parentage before the baby's born. But they do it and file it, and it just doesn't go into effect until the baby's there, but it allows dad to be dad. Like, we've had this conversation, my name is John, I'm here, and I'm staying here, so can you recognize that I'm here before the baby's born, before we're getting down the road a little bit? Another idea that the parents had and some of our stakeholders was that could shared custody be default if everybody agrees that's what they want. If there's disagreement, no. But if there's agreement, we do it faster. Everybody agrees on all aspects. Is there kind of a template, sign and file, rather than go through this huge process? And finally, they want to know, could the Department of Health and Human Services offer training, community organizations, faith-based agencies to provide that assistance and have that conversation before, anytime before, with enough time to think about what's going on there. And I think some groups do better on that. Some folks are having that conversation. One of the things that we heard from the dads, though, as well as some of our direct service people, is if your uncles, your cousins, and your dad, and all the people that ever loved you in your life are telling you that this is a bad process, it's going to take a little education to unsort that, because it is a bad process for dads. I mean, it's good that they want to be in their child's life, but they're signing up for a lot of financial commitment without a lot of equal support. And so you're swimming uphill against everybody who's ever loved them telling them something else. And so how can we have a conversation that's also honest with them? The state Department of Human Services and Department of Health have worked really hard to change the messaging and say, look, this is not legal custody. This is all that this does. And that's great, but it's really hard to concentrate after you've had a baby. And after your baby's born and you're really excited, it's not time to do that. So could we have a conversation ahead of time? Did I get it all?
I think so.
All right.
Yeah, some states are working with, like, trying at the hospital open houses. Dads and moms often come together to see what the birthing process would be like. That would be a nice time to have somebody there to discuss the acknowledgement of paternity. At least one state is now mandating that their home visiting programs need to all be trained in educating parents about the process too. It's another endpoint, again, it goes through the mom, and I do think there needs to be an avenue where dad can go. Question that comes up a lot is, what if you're not sure about the biological paternity? Now there are tests that can definitively determine that can be done without amniocentesis, can be done with a cheek swab. They won't hold up in court because there's no chain of custody, but if a couple were honestly talking about, we want to be together, but honestly, I need to know that you're the dad, or I need to know that I'm the dad because my brother got burned a couple times, and wanted to do that, you can do that. You can swab the cheek, send it in, get the DNA test, and know very early in pregnancy. Some dads told us that they're kind of there at the birth, but they're sort of wondering if it's really their child. That is the worst time in the world to be doing that. So helping parents think about that. Will it matter to them if they know? Do they need to find out? All of that, if we had a process where second, third trimester, these opportunities were available, kind of like the North Point Co-Parent Court. How many people are familiar with that? That's for unmarried parents who are having trouble after the baby's born and are kind of fighting about custody. They would be agreeable to testing that model during pregnancy, because what they do is they do a lot of teaching about responsibility and the various options that you can have, but they also teach how to co-parent independent of a romantic relationship, because a lot of parents can still be good parents after a separation, after a divorce, but you kind of have to learn how to deal with that anger and separation issues. So, we've been talking to them a little about, and they're open to the idea of piloting a process like that could be done with unmarried couples before birth. You get all the information you need, he could talk privately with a counselor. If like she didn't want to tell him right away that she's not sure he's the dad, have somebody help her figure out how she's going to deal with that. Have him deal with his concerns that he might have too about being a parent. And then they bring them together and they jointly develop a co-parenting plan, and then they take it to court. So instead of having to fight in front of court, they do that facilitation and negotiation ahead of time on their own willingly with some trained facilitators, take their plan to court.
So one of our difficulties with this study is we started off looking at how do we improve services for dads in a home visiting context. And this policy thing was just in us. And so we went after it and we said, here's what we know, here's what we've learned, here's what we're hearing. It's not something we can city ordinance our way out of. The city is not the best lead agency here. We had the opportunity to have these conversations. We pulled them together and really went back and said, okay, did we hear you right? Is this what the thing is that we're talking about? But this is bigger than us. Remembering that first map, it's statewide, and we all are existing under the same federal to state policies. There's some differences in how the county child support offices handle that, and they look really cool and really different in some cases. You have some innovative stuff over here, innovative stuff over there, but as a state, we're all in it together on this. So one of our question comes, who should lead this? Who should do this work? We're not it, probably. But do you have a part of this? Who do we pull together to say we have some specific recommendations that should be your questions? There's lots of questions. We're suggesting changing statute. We're suggesting opening some difficult spaces and saying, guys, we got to talk. And this is about your most intimate relationship of parent and child. It's gonna get hard. Is there anything that you can see here that your agency can do or should do, or who should we talk to? What should we do? Patty, did I get the whole situation there outlined?
Yes, I just wanted to put it out there. We've been meeting with various partners who we think might be interested in working on these policy issues at a statewide level. So we're also very, we'd be happy to sit down with you too and talk about all of this. Just to put it bluntly, our city IGR, our lobbyist, has said to us, the city's not going to lead on this issue as a statewide issue. Go out and find some partners, especially partners who have some legislative capacity to work with us. So that's really what we're about. So yeah.
There's no city ordinance to solve a statewide problem.
No. Interesting, a lot of people ask us, well, why don't you go to the men's groups and get their advocacy group going? But that's sort of the heart of the problem. We don't have those groups that have that political power, especially unmarried dads. Some of the divorced dads have, their own perspective on getting child support and stuff, but that isn't the group we're talking about. We're talking about new dads, unmarried dads, and largely low-income men and men of color. And they really do not have that collective voice that they can see them together someday. They develop their own advocacy groups. Places like Healthy Start are trying to, teach some men how to advocate more, and but they're small successes. They're not enough to have a lot of political power. Like some of the women's groups do.
And we're also asking people to reframe their thinking a little bit. Unmarried parenthood can be planned, it can be exciting and wanted and desirable and co-parenting, and we don't have the systems, structures, and policies to honor that, which is different than our concern about teenage pregnancy or other things like that. We're talking about people who are above 18. Under 30, often, but thoughts?
I have a question for you. So do you have a list of the policy considerations that and impacts that you want to share or that we can send out to others?
And the ones that we had here, this is where they came from. That's more detail on it, but these are the three big things that pretty much everybody's agreed on. Nobody has a lot of heartburn over, actually. We went back and we asked everybody at the State Department, like, when this happen? And they said, well, we pretty much think it happens because we're trying to administratively align with the policy, and said what they said. But what they said had seen implications for our unmarried dads and moms, and so it was kind of an efficient decision, had these other outcomes tied to them. And so there's not a lot of resistance to the idea, but somebody's got to ask.
I'm going to leave these on the table here if anybody wants to grab any of these. Anything else?
I'll be happy to send those around electronically. It's kind of our standard, what we have learned from the people we talk to. It's not a city position, as Patty said, but it's what we're holding on to as a result of all of these conversations.
I have a follow-up question, if I can. Go ahead.
Oh, just a quick question. What was your end? I mean, how many?
We had 66 unmarried parents for the father intervention, for the actual advocate. For the conversations about policy, we had 80 unmarried moms and dads and 30, 40 institutional stakeholders who gave us an hour to 2 hours of qualitative interviews per person, one-on-one. So
several of them were actually around. Big change happened under Clinton, which I love here. Several of them were around developing the state policies, federal law, and the developing of the child support and stuff. So it's really interesting to talk to those people. Very good intentions at the beginning, and then they've seen how things have played out. Some things would have been different.
So one comment and then one question specific to home visiting. On the flip side, I know we're talking about father involvement here, but Minnesota is one of the few states that actually start the process of eliminating mom's parental rights to children if she's in prison, whereas we don't have that law for dads. So women who are in prison automatically have, so we're one of the very few states, really old law. So if there is interest in talking about parental rights, I think it would make sense in general to talk about how state laws make it difficult to parent children in general. So I would add that to that conversation more broadly. But specific to home visiting, and we know about that from our home visiting work with moms who are incarcerated, how have you seen this issue crop up in our eligibility for certain types of home visiting programs? Like, is it a barrier for us to be able to work with both parents with the home visiting models that we're using? And where is that the biggest barrier? And do we need to work with some of our models to address this as well? And or, I mean, I'm assuming if it's an evidence-informed promising practice model, we have more flexibility. But do we need to work with our models to help us work with families?
I'll just say, we incorporated a father advocate into the last round of evidence-based home visiting funding, but we had to get permission from NFP to do that. So I know that was one instance.
I think with PHP, there's one identified. So even if they're co-parenting in the same home, the mom is still the primary. Right. So there's no, the models don't leave space to have two parents.
Right. When we know a lot of children are cared for in multiple homes, it makes it difficult to provide both parents or all parents if there are both.
And I think
with the resources they need to be the best parent.
With a larger about some of that, though, Laura, it's also, there's a lot of research that demonstrates that the developmental outcomes of the child are really dependent on the primary relationship between the adult. So there, I mean, I don't think we want to go against the research or against, you know, so I think we got to figure out, like, how can we build bridges, you know, and look at the barriers. Because research does demonstrate that.
Kind of speaking to that, you know, you talked about all this really rich data that you got qualitatively, but when speaking to legislative bodies, unfortunately, we still see quantitative data as the most rigorous part. And so I'm wondering if maybe bringing in that aspect of how this plays a role role in the overall optimal development of children and speaking to it on those terms, maybe bringing in like a body like SEED to help like lead a study across community organizations to get those numbers to help be able to speak language that legislators are speaking.
It is super frustrating because the survey's way easier than hundreds of
Exactly.
hours of qualitative conversations to
Right.
manage.
And, you know, you were staying away from that terminology of insignificantness, but like, you know that it changed lives, but to legislators, that doesn't matter. They want to see those numbers and what's happening.
I do have numbers on the father advocate themselves and a fabulous chart that does that in the way we want it to. We're looking at it, we're like, maybe not for PowerPoint, maybe not today, but we made a chart where the line goes up. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, the biggest predictor of mom success is dad. Right.
So-
So.
And
Yeah.
Yes.
You don't have to do the research yourself.
Well, even, you know, the scientific gold standard is randomized controlled trials. So we didn't do 50-50, we did 60-40 to try to maximize the father advocate. But the reality is we felt terribly conflicted ethically the entire time. There are some father services, but not enough.
Yeah.
And so to deny dad's stuff. So one of the things that, you know, we're encouraging is more quasi-experimental studies, realistic evaluations, and things like that, so that when people are trying different things, we may not know the gold standard. Yes, we have proof that this works, but there's still so much to be learned, I think, before we move into the randomized controlled trials. But when you go for federal funding, they're talking about loosening up some of that, because it really is difficult to frankly deny, and some men broke into tears. They were so hoping that this was their one shot, you know. So yes, we did work with them, or had our research assistant work with them to be sure to access something else, but it wasn't the same to them. And they asked if they could open a different envelope and try the randomization again. So it was really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So we would not do that model of a study again.
What I learned last week is that there are a couple of father support, fatherhood programs that are on the cusp of being evidence-based right now. One of them, interestingly enough, is text-based. There's an initial face-to-face meeting with the dad, and then after that, it's text communications about parenting with activities to try and check-ins about how it went. The other thing is that the state of Colorado has done a lot to dismantle barriers to father engagement, and one of the things that they found, for instance, by eliminating if you're not up to date with your child support, you can't get your driver's license renewed. So they've suspended those kind of punitive measures. And what they have found is that fathers who are engaged start paying more child support than fathers who aren't.
It works itself out.
You know,
It turns out everything.
Yeah.
I know I'm trying to be careful of your time because I know you guys have already put in a long day. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us and let us know what you're thinking or what questions are. We have just mountains of stuff, and so we have an hour today to give you our once around the world. But we have it all. We have so much. Not at all. We have quite a bit, and we're happy to help in any way we can to your thinking or support it by saying, yeah, we've heard that.
And Pat, thank you so much. What we would like to do is make the video available and the slides available to everybody. So we'll put that up on our website so that you can review those. And then maybe I can get this to you, or any other resources you think we should make available.
We do have an article about the fathers, what they said about the recognition of parenting.
That would be great.
So most of us in the room would be happy to post that.
Oh, that would be great. I will get that information out to you. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for
I really
having us.
appreciate your time, all the great research, and sharing this information.